Hello everyone. This is a Cone 5 kiln opening. I have mostly white, speckled white ware in here, so I'm not gonna linger too much on each piece, of course, because it pretty much looks the same as kind of my production work that I do. And I don't do kiln openings for it because I always figure it's kind of boring to watch, but I thought I would at least share one this time. And there's a few other things in here, nothing too exciting, but I also wanted to talk about, you know, as makers, creative people, having your own business, even if it's a hobby, there's things in life that interfere with this. You sometimes have to keep going no matter what. Sometimes you have an option to take time off or slow down. And in this case, for me, this has pretty much been the worst week of my entire life. But I still have orders that I have to do. And, I did actually extend the orders, as it turned out, for a few more days. Um, that was actually before it all happened, which was weird because I just was getting behind in trying to get this done. It's been a little cooler here, so things didn't dry out as fast. And, there's always something that goes wrong with pottery. So you kind of have to adjust your schedule a little bit. But basically, I'm going to try to get through this. I wanted to talk about when something like really bad happens and you have to keep going in your business sometimes. Sometimes, like I said, you do have the option to take time off and maybe tell customers that it's going to be a little longer if you're doing things to order, have commission work that you have to do. Um, I make most of this to order. So I have an Etsy shop where I do mostly made to order work. And it's difficult to do made to order. It can be quite stressful, even if it's like a production thing that you always do. It still can be quite stressful. Like I said, with things that happen in your life, you have to still persevere and get these things done. So this week, my dog died. She was taken very quickly, and it was, something that was tragic and happened fast, and it happened here at home. I don't really want to talk about what happened. I thought I would do a whole video, but I'm not sure that I can really do it. Um, I had her for about 10 and a half years, and this is a picture that actually was in my office recently, but I have had it hanging up out here. She didn't like being in the pottery here. My previous space, she actually liked being in more because it was connected to my house, and this is not connected to my house. As she was getting older, she was about 12 as far as we know. So this is an actual picture that I had printed out. And of course, all our pictures are digital now. So this is like the only physical photo that I have. And she was about maybe a year or two old at this point, because she was about a year, they say, when we got her. And I don't know if I really believe that because she seemed to be aging quite a bit. She's kind of like losing her hearing and her sight recently. This summer, she seemed to be kind of declining with her senses, but her sense of smell was still there. So this was Ruby, and of course she was a Chihuahua, as you can tell. So I wanted to talk about the fact that you have to work through this sometimes. And this kiln load, all I really had to do was glaze this after the death of Ruby. I had to glaze this. So thank God these pieces were already made because I have tried throwing some things since this. It's only been about 5 days since this happened. So it feels like a very long time right now, but it's only been about 5 days. And I tried to do some throwing. I thought that I could kind of foolishly funnel, a lot of pain away by throwing, because throwing is very cathartic for me. I like to make everything into a throwing event, a project, but not with this. Because throwing and creating, hand building, whatever you're doing requires a positive energy, and I just haven't had that positive energy. But glazing can be less of a positive energy because sometimes you have to get it done. And in my case, as you can see, it's whiteware, and I had to just basically dip most of this, and it was ready. But I just wanted to talk about moving through grief and working through it, as I'm sure many of you have done. So, anyways, I use mostly Laguna. I call it WC608, which I believe is the Laguna number. I think it's called M60 also, which was Miller 60 because they bought Miller out. And it's a heavily speckled, sort of light brown or buff stoneware. And this is a glaze that I make, and it took me a long time to get this effect where the speckling kind of bleeds through just enough so that it's kind of like a peppered look. And this is a salt cellar. I have to tap the top of this a little bit. I usually use a hammer. I need to get a piece of fabric. This is the soft end of the hammer that I use. And it will usually come out. I have to get fabric to put on top of it. Use the pot handle or the pot holders. And I do have to be kind of violent with this to get it to come off. And that one's gonna take a while, so I'm not gonna do that one. It will come off. I call it like a vapor lock that happens. It's probably just like a little bit of the glaze because I'll show you hopefully if I can get this done. There. So it takes like a tap in the right exact spot for it to come off. So it's a butter dish, a butter bell, which, by the way, don't use the word butter bell if you sell these because that's a copyright, which I found out. So I call it a French butter crock. And these are kind of on the smaller side. And I know it's on the smaller side, but this style, because of the way it's held, I have tried making them larger this way, but it actually is kind of cumbersome, I think, for some people. So this really only holds like less than a stick of butter. But I've never really had any complaints about this style. I don't like having to wax this and fire them this way. Because if you fire these with this bare clay, I don't think it matters what type of clay you use. I mean, maybe porcelain with like 0% absorption might work, but eventually you're going to get mold. I've seen it with different potters that make it that way. Like over the years, people will get mold, and I've had customers say that has happened with ones that are not waxed right there because then you can fire that like that. But in this case, I have to wax here, unglazed, and waxed here, and then there are times when these don't come off. Like if this touches just a little bit down inside of there, it's not going to come off. It's broken, when you do get it off. So I really don't like firing them this way, but I'm kind of stuck with this for now until I do a different design, which I would really like to do. I would like it to hold a stick of butter as well. And then I don't glaze the bottom. So that is a French butter dish, and I only have 3 of those in here. And then I have, these are incense holders. And I never really thought people bought incense holders to the extent that they do. I try to do these so that they hold bamboo and also Japanese incense, which I prefer Japanese incense. So that's why I had started with this design. And it's kind of a difficult design to do to catch the ashes in such a small dish. So it's not 100% effective because there's so many different types of bamboo that are out there. The sticks that they use at the base of the incense, the thickness of it. I don't know if there's different, types like flat or round. There probably are, because I've had people say that it doesn't really hold it up right like it should. And I test every single one with a bamboo stick or an incense stick, because I do have some that are just blank, because I make incense myself sometimes. And it's very, very thin. It's like incredibly thin, and I can usually hold this upside down with the incense in it because it's unglazed inside the hole there, and the hole is like a conical shape. And this clay is rough, which is something I really hate about this clay, that you can get this roughness. And of course, I sand this, but it's still much rougher than like white stoneware would be, even sanded. It's really hard to get it to where it's like really nice and smooth, and there will often be sort of like groggy pieces on the edge. Like that's kind of rough right there. So for mugs, I don't really like it. I don't hardly make mugs with this much. I have, and I do burnish the edges, and by the time the glaze firing's done, it's usually rough again. But in this case, with the incense going in here, the roughness helps. It helps to grab onto the incense stick. So that's why I typically make them with this clay. And sometimes I will use other clay bodies, but this is primarily what I use it for. So I have some ornaments. This is November, the time I'm recording this, a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. I made it's a cookie cutter shape, and then I've underglaze painted this. And this has, I think it's V360 underglaze, and it came out really good. The white, I almost always get some matted surfaces when I use the V360, which is the velvet white. Um, I did that instead of slip because if you watched my previous video, kiln opening, which was a low fire, which was a cone '04, some of the slip had come off. So I didn't really want to use the slip. I've always had problems with slip that I make coming off in stoneware. If I use like a porcelain clay body on top of a stoneware, I usually that works. But I just didn't really want to take the risk of it coming off because I don't have time to keep remaking things. But this the unicorn was a cookie cutter shape, and I underglaze painted it. I believe they're all Amico. This is called blush. The pink that holds up in mid range. Most of the pinks have trouble, and I believe this is amethyst and violet, which I did a thinner coat of violet to get a more stripy. Sometimes when you layer in the mid range firing with underglazes, they get muddy. And I can kind of see some muddiness starting to happen there. It's like a discoloration. I would say it's even kind of browning out slightly. So I try not to layer too much in the mid range, and that's sort of the benefit of doing low fire is that you can layer and they stay true. And then there's nichrome wire, so it'll hang like this. And I did unglazed in the back. This clay body is very similar to the other one, the WC608. I was hoping to switch to this one because it's kind of a lighter, like I wouldn't call it white, but it's kind of a less brown, closer to white buff. It is called Sybil Speckle. I think it's WC905. If you look up on the Laguna website, it's okay. It's wasn't as good with the white glaze that I use as far as the way the speckling burns through. It kind of looked like a much more mild speckling, so I didn't want to switch to it. But this will take glazes better. And this the clear that I'm using here is one that I make. It is Jessica Putnam Phillips recipe called 2167 clear, and it's very easy to use. It does have Gersley borate in it, which is a problem right now. You might not be able to find it. So the new Gersley borate that's out there is actually a blend, and I have not tried that yet. It might have EPK in it too, which is hard to get also right now. But anyways, if you have those things, you can look up that recipe called 2167 clear. It is by far my favorite mid-range clear that I've ever used. It never goes milky. It always stays clear. I don't think even thicker I've had any trouble with it. Um, this one I dipped because I waxed the back, so it's dipped. I don't usually paint it on. I think I've done it a few times and it still worked out okay. So even dipped, I get a little bit of a roughness because this clay also has like a really rough texture to it. So I have some more ornaments down here as well. And this is the witness cone. This is a 5. I stopped using multiple witness cones because this is an L&L kiln. It has, just, I don't know if you can tell, here is the thermocouple. There are 3 of these. It's a 3-zone. So in the beginning, I definitely was using multiple cones. You use like a 4, 5, and a 6. I fired to cone 5. I hold for 12 minutes to get like a 5.5, or what I would call a hot cone 5 or cool cone 6. Laguna clays mostly like cone 5. So I try not to fire too high with them just to avoid problems, especially the WC608 speckle. It becomes, it's like the speckling bleeds through a lot more the higher you go. Um, into a cone 6, this is more of the same. The speckling will kind of overwhelm the piece. So I do try to keep it at a cone 5. A hot cone 5 seems to work out really well for clay and glazes that I use. And I think all the clay that I use in here is Laguna. The speckled clay, the WC608 or M60, is a very, very easy to use clay. It really doesn't crack, it doesn't warp, more of the same. And you can see the heavily speckle on the back. And I do stamp my business name, Back to Earth Pottery, in there. I don't like to backfill it with glaze because it will stain. It stains this clay. I've tried a bunch of different ways of doing it, and it never looks good. And it actually does not show up that well with this heavy speckling. I've gotten to where, I don't know if I showed you, I have a rubber stamp, and I use the like a rubber stamp pad. Minnesota Clay makes them, and I've actually refilled it with different um, black underglazes, but that does show up. Whereas, of course, this doesn't show up. You probably don't see it at all on the camera, but in real life, you can read that it does say Back to Earth Pottery on it. So that is something to consider, and that's one of the things about the clay that I always wanted to switch the clay, because I can't really do too much with like surface decoration or anything, because the speckling will just overwhelm it. I made some ornaments with the Sybil speckle. I did some of these last year, smaller, with the WC608, but this is the WC905 clay, which is lighter. So I wanted kind of a lighter, brighter look. I make this blue-green, from what's called Odyssey base or Odyssey white, you might find it under. And I've made the white version, but it makes a very stable, clear base and shows color pretty well. This only looks like this on this clay body. Hold on just a second. I have a sample on the smooth white that I use. It comes out like a kind of a dull blue. So there's like a huge difference, at least in real life, of what that looks like. And I wanted this look. I wanted this sort of denim, kind of warm blue green. So these are like a Santa, or I kind of think of them as like, old man winter type of ornament. The way I do these is I draw on like not cardboard, but it would be like a heavy paper stock, a cover stock, or it has to be like a heavier paper to survive it. So you draw the image on the paper, cut it out, and then you on your slab you just lay that that cutout that you made on the paper. So you can kind of make anything you want doing that. I have tried. I have a 3D printer. I have done 3D printed cookie cutters. I just don't like the process of it. This is faster. This has a more organic feel to it, which I like. You might get slight differences. I have like a little bit of a, little area probably when I was cutting, and I tried to smooth it, but I don't really mind these things because it shows the handmade quality of it. I just added a nose. I backfilled the eyes with tuxedo stroking coat. These are stroking coats here. So this is the glaze that I make, which I call it Odyssey Blue Green. I don't know the percentages of the oxides. I could tell you in the comments. If you have a question, I can look it up. This is the Cottontail stroking coat, and Cutie Pie Coral is used for the And I have tested the stroke and coats. I've tested them on their own, and I've tested them under my 2167 clear glaze, because you can use them like an underglaze. So I have tested them at this range to make sure that they hold up. So I only use the ones that hold up, that I know hold up, because a lot of them burn out, a lot of them shift color. So it is a pretty limited color palette, but it works for this. So I have 3 of these and unglazed on the back, and you can see that the clay is pretty light. It's a really good clay, actually. It's very similar to the heavily speckled 608. If you use both, you can kind of have like the two different, but I probably will not use this clay very much now because I've not been able to stop using the 608. So I used this clay that I showed you. The sample is 903, which is called Rae Smooth, RAE Smooth. This is by far the best white clay I have ever used. If you can get your hands on this white clay, I don't know if you can right now because I believe it has EPK in it, and I believe it's in a shortage because they can't get the EPK to make the clay body. So I'm going to be in trouble because I don't know if I can get the EPK myself, or even just the glaze, the clay, I'm sorry. I do use it in glazes as well. But this is the Rae Smooth, and I use oatmeal by Laguna on these jars, which the jars are further down, so we're just going to keep going. I got to put my kiln furniture away. What you're seeing there, all of those colors on those test chips. Oh, there, I just lost one. It did not break, it's okay. On those test chips are colors for earth, underglazes. They're called color strokes. And I just got a bunch more in. So I wanted to test them at cone 5. A lot of them will hold up to cone 5. But I knew that some wouldn't because I had done like a little bit of a test. Now I use the clay body that I'm making. I think it's called Val's Vitreous White. It's really like a cone 6, but it's probably very vitrified even at a hot 5. I'm going to do a whole video on these color chips. I'm not going to show them all in this video because I want to show the results and the differences, maybe even with how they look in low fire. But this clay is similar to the Rae Smooth, that it just happened to be is about the same color. So this is like my backup if I absolutely have to make my own clay, because I might not be able to get that Rae Smooth from Laguna. I'm have some kind of a backup option. I'm just hoping by the new year that all of this is not going to be a problem. Okay, I just had to put those off to the side. And I don't know how interesting the rest of this kiln load will be, so I may edit it down so that you don't have to see too much of the same stuff, because that's kind of my life, is, you know, making the same pieces all the time. And production work, you know, it's not that interesting to see. I always say pottery is far less glamorous than what people like to think, because, you know, it's just bags of, whether it's clay or ingredients, you know, raw ingredients to make things, and buckets of glaze. You know, it's probably not what people are envisioning when they come to a clay studio. And when you do production work, it is, of course, a lot of the same thing. So I try to put a witness cone at each level around where the thermocouples are. So if you can see this thermocouple, it really gets in the way of your firing. I have to load this a certain way. This is not loaded to the amount that I usually do because of, you know, the way this week has gone. But I wasn't really able to get anything more done for various reasons. And of course, losing my dog was shutting everything down. But I was able to do the glaze, and I had to do this firing. It was not an option to not do it. So I do have, I'm going to put the lids off to the side, but I do spoon rests in the WC608, not glazed on the back. These are also lids for other jars. I love making jars. I think it's probably my favorite thing to do. But of course, it's two pots. You know, you're making two pieces. Now I throw these as they are here. Instead, this is not added on. It's one piece of clay. You know, for production reasons, that's a much more, you know, it's more efficient to do. It does sometimes result in them not fitting as well as I would like. So I kind of struggle with this. I try to keep an extra stock of lids around. I didn't make any extra ones this time, but a lot of times I'll make like 2 or 3 extra ones in a firing so that at some point you're gonna have some that just don't fit that well for whatever reason as well. You know, you try to measure the best you can, but and this has the oatmeal. Be able to see better when the jars come out. It has a speckling of its own because this is raised smooth. It does not have any speckling. And the oatmeal is actually really good. When you see the jars, you'll see the problem with the oatmeal, and I'll show. It's not really a problem, but it kind of is to me. Only because the speckling, which I think is sort of like a lemite, if that's how you say it, elmanite, I think it's called elmanite. Which I have bags of over here. I don't know if that's what this is because it's like a brown speckling as opposed to elmanite being dark. It's usually black, like a peppered effect. I don't know what they use, but the speckling that they use in that glaze is like heavy, just like any time. It must be something metal, and it sinks to the bottom so that when you glaze with it, you can sometimes get like areas where it just collects, you know, and you have this sort of weird, almost it's like a defect look. So I don't like that about it, but it's a very, very reliable satin matte glaze at Cone 5, which I believe it is called a Cone 5 glaze. Most of their stuff is. So let's see here if I can get these out. So we have more of the same. That's how it goes. So these are salt cellars. I have these on Etsy. These are the lid to it. This is thrown this way. You know, just as one piece. And I use calipers to measure this. Of course, you make this first. I usually make like however many of these, 8 to 16 or something per batch, and you measure the opening with the calipers, and then you put the calipers around this side with the measurement on them, and you keep it that way. Again, sometimes these don't fit perfectly, but most of the time they do. I don't really mind a little bit of give, and there's usually enough per batch that I can, you know, try to figure out, you know, the ones that fit the best. So that's how those are made, and they're just simple salt cellars, pinch salt cellars. I refer to them as pinch salt cellars because, you know, there's no spoon and you would take the salt out that way. So let me just unload these. And I know the next level does have the larger salt cellars in them. And I also made, these are like a ring dish, jewelry dish. It's really small, but I saw a potter recently. I think she was Canadian, and I don't know the name of the channel. It was just something random that I watched recently. Been trying to distract myself the best I can. And these, you know, she said I think hers were hand built. And, you know, this was a separate piece, and this would have been like a little hand built pinch dish on top. But I decided to, because again, I always try to throw hand built projects or make it into something that I could throw. It's not going to be as organic looking, but I threw this as, I believe it's 9 ounces of clay, and I threw it like this. Um, you have to leave the dish part thick, and then I trimmed this out so that it would be sort of conical right here. It was kind of a lot of work to do, really, but I always find it easier than having to attach pieces and make everything separately and take a lot of time doing it. And I just like the durability of it, that it's all, one piece, and then just trim it out. So that meant that this, the bottom section right here, so when you're throwing it this way, you're going to leave this kind of thick so that you can have more of a bowl shape. And this clay, this of course is the 608 clay. This very, very rarely cracks. I mean, I've made thousands of pots with this clay. I can probably tell you I've had like 5 pots crack. Most of the time it's these lids, because of how the compression for this can be hard to get enough compression, but I really don't have much trouble. Like 5 pots out of thousands of pots have cracked. So I knew that this would hold up, and I like the idea of this type of pot, a little, it's a pedestal ring dish. So that's that. I only made one just to try to see how feasible it would be to trim that out, and it was easy to do. So, I have more, and I have dropped pots in here. That this clay is so durable, it never chips, so I'm not going to chip, but definitely don't drop a pot down if you can help it. I'm not good at doing videos, so I can't multitask. And a few more of these, which I'm trying to do fast so you don't have to watch me unload this. All right, and some stilts or kiln furniture to take out. And you can see that my kiln wash is in need of being removed. I need to get a sander, an electric sander, to do it. I really don't like using kiln wash. I never have liked using it. But of course, when you have a pot stick to a bare shelf, you then regret not doing it. I don't like how brittle it becomes. And most of the time I can kiln wash on top, but after a while, when you don't take it all off again, it's like it becomes impermeable, so that when you put kiln wash on top, it will just flake off and it just never adheres again. It's like you can get like 3 times of not having to sand the thing down all the way. And it might be years, but it's very annoying when that happens, because I need to sand all this down and little pieces of kiln wash come off all the time. Okay, so what we will do here, I'll just show you the cone, the witness cone. Now this is very consistent. Every one of them so far has looked like that, if I can find them. The other one fell on the floor. Here it is. So all 3 of these on each shelf has, if you can see, hard to set it up, is consistent. So that's a cone 5 witness cone. And it is very consistent. This kiln has been that way. I maintain it myself. It does need new elements. If you can see, the power is turned off, I believe. It is turning gray here. Once it turns gray and starts to lay flat, they are getting close to being need of a replacement. And this firing took about 9.5 hours. So for me, I can tell with this kiln, because I know this kiln, that's getting to be a long time. It's usually like 8.5 to 9.5 is what I consider to be normal for a cone 5. And of course I hold it at 12. And when I put new elements in, I hold it usually like 8 to 10 minutes, because it will fire hotter when the elements are new. So as they age, I sort of adjust the soak time. Probably going to start getting to like a 15-minute soak, and the firing will start to take like 10 hours and the heat work starts to be too much. So the like the white, this is the oatmeal glaze from Laguna, and this is the bottom of the jar. This can be kind of almost more like crystallized because it is a matte, sort of more crystal type glaze. Right now, it looks really good. The speckling is perfect. And actually, of course, I wanted to show you what the insides can sometimes look like, but these came out good. I'm getting down to the bottom of the barrel of this, it's still fine, but when you first make it, I don't know, this speckling seems to be more likely to collect in places, and sometimes the inside of the jar will have a lot of speckling and it looks weird. Um, Let me get a lid for it. These have that is an okay fit. It's just a little bit loose, but you have to have a little bit of give. It's not good when it fits in there really tight, and like if you turn it, sometimes when it's a tight fit, it actually can lock in. I've had that happen. So I usually prefer a little bit of a give to the fit of the lid. And these have, at the current time, I'm using these little scoops, these little wooden scoops, which you can get, from Amazon, or sometimes Clay Supplies have them. The thing that's nice about when you make a salt cellar or any type of like a sugar jar and you're going to put a spoon in, I would prefer to make my own spoons, but it would really increase the price of these quite a bit. I do like the sort of idea that it's different materials being used. I don't know if I would want people constantly putting a ceramic spoon in here, and it's not going to chip, but something like this would be kind of fragile to make. So the thing about the handle of the spoon, because I have struggled with this over the years, I have many different types of spoons. The wider, some of them will flare out, it kind of like flares out, and it actually is better to handle the spoon like that, but you really have to make this really wide then to accommodate, and it can be with the shrinkage involved. There's been times where the spoons didn't fit. So I do like these scoops for this reason, and it's easy to scoop with them. So, it's a nice little set, and I do make them also with the word salt on the front, but I didn't need any for this kiln mode, so I didn't do that. And that is basically all that's in this kiln mode. I don't want to unload all of it. It's just more of the jars for the salt cellar. And they all actually came out really good, really the same look this time. So sometimes this glaze can drip too. It's just like at the perfect specific gravity right now where it's not dripping and running. Because I've had customers not like that, idea that it kind of drips, and being a matte glaze, it doesn't move any more than what you see. So it looks really good this time. So I'm happy with that. So glazing this, when I had to glaze it, was extremely difficult to do with the, what was going on here. Luckily, it was just a sort of a dip and go type of kiln unload for the most part. If I had to do more decoration, I don't think I could have done it this time. So, working through problems in your life, grief in your life, it's not the type of energy you want to put into your work. So it's like you don't want to do it at the time. You need to do it at the time. So, I was trying to find some way to do this glazing without being in that state of mind, because it has been an incredible amount of grief this week. So I don't want to talk about it anymore. So I just wanted to talk about how we as makers have to kind of put away our personal life at times to get through, because I've had to do shows. Like when my mom died, I had to do a show the week after, and I didn't want to cancel it because it actually happened at this time of year too, which is leading up to the holidays. So it's like I've been through this before in a way. This was different. This was a lot harder to do. It's still very hard to do, and I don't sell in person anymore. So at least I don't have to go somewhere to see people and try to get through it that way, because that can be so much harder in a way. But that is this kiln unload. If you have any questions about the clay or glaze or any about the thing about the firing, I'd be happy to answer it in the comments. Please like and subscribe. This is a new channel, so whatever videos are the ones that people want to watch, I hope to be able to make those and do interesting videos if I can. So I'm not only going to do low fire on this channel, but I would like to talk about low fire work and firing because it's very difficult to find information about it. And I'm doing slipware in the low fire, and sometimes I will do slipware also in this the mid range as well. So I'm going to kind of translate both of that type of surface decoration into both firings, just to be able to do it in stoneware and in earthenware terracotta. So stay tuned for all that. I want to, think about better times ahead and exciting things ahead. So thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, like I said, and I will see you next time.